The lawyer's office felt smaller than it should have, packed with my entire extended family like sardines in an expensive can. I sat in the back corner, watching my relatives adjust their funeral clothes and check their watches. 3 days had passed since Grandma's service, and here we were, about to discover who got what from her estate. I'd always been the odd one out in this family. While my cousins pursued business degrees and corporate careers, I chose art school. While they bought houses in subdivisions, I rented a studio apartment above a coffee shop. Grandma never seemed to mind my different path, but I could feel the disapproval radiating from everyone else in that stuffy room. Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer for 30 years, cleared his throat and opened a thick folder. His wire-rimmed glasses caught the afternoon light streaming through Venetian blinds. The anticipation was thick enough to cut with a knife, and I found myself holding my breath despite trying to appear indifferent to the whole proceeding. Eleanor Margaret Thompson's last will and testament, Mr. Henderson began, his voice carrying the weight of decades of legal experience. The formal language felt strange applied to the woman who used to sneak me extra cookies and let me paint watercolors on her back porch. One by one, he read through the bequests. My cousin Sarah inherited the main house, all 4 bedrooms and 3 acres of perfectly manicured lawn. My uncle Robert got the antique furniture collection that Grandma had spent 40 years assembling. Cousin Michael received her stock portfolio, which everyone knew was substantial. The jewelry went to my Aunt Patricia, including the diamond ring that had been in our family for 4 generations. I watched each face light up as their name was called, watched them nod with satisfaction or surprise. Some inheritances were expected, others came as pleasant shocks. But as the list grew shorter and the valuable items disappeared from the estate inventory, my name remained conspicuously absent from Mr. Henderson's careful recitation. The reading continued methodically, covering everything from the antique clock collection to the vintage china set. My father received Grandma's car and her workshop tools. My sister got the piano that had dominated the living room for as long as I could remember. Even distant relatives I barely knew received something. A painting here, a piece of furniture there. I felt the familiar sting of being overlooked, though I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. Material possessions weren't everything, right? Grandma had given me years of love and encouragement. She'd believed in my art when no one else did. That was worth more than any inheritance, wasn't it? But as Mr. Henderson's voice droned on through the legal language, I couldn't help but notice the sideways glances from my family members. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed almost satisfied by my exclusion. My father avoided my eyes entirely, which hurt more than I wanted to admit. I'd always known I was his disappointment, but this public confirmation felt like a slap across the face. "That concludes the reading of Eleanor Margaret Thompson's will," Mr. Henderson announced, closing the folder with finality. The room erupted in quiet conversations as family members discussed their inheritances and made plans for retrieving their new possessions. I stood to leave, ready to escape the suffocating atmosphere of measured politeness and barely concealed smugness. This was exactly what I'd expected. So why did it hurt so much? I made it halfway to the door before Mr. Henderson's voice stopped me cold. "Actually, there's one more matter," he said, reaching for a smaller envelope that had been tucked beneath the main will. The room fell silent again, all eyes turning toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to mild annoyance. "This is a separate document, specifically for—" He consulted the envelope. "The grandchild who chose art over money, dreams over security." My heart hammered against my ribs as every face in the room turned toward me. There was only one person in the family who fit that description. Only one grandchild who had disappointed everyone by choosing creativity over conventional success. Mr. Henderson handed me the small envelope with my name written across it in Grandma's distinctive handwriting. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it, acutely aware of 20 pairs of eyes watching my every move. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message that would change everything. "My dear artist," it began, "while others see only what glitters, you have always seen beauty in forgotten places. If you want to understand what I truly valued, look where the grain once grew tall and the shadows run deep. What you seek is hidden where only patience and love can find it. The old silo holds more than memories. It holds your future. Trust your heart, not their judgment. I read the note twice before its meaning began to sink in. The old grain silo on Grandma's property had been abandoned for decades, standing like a weathered sentinel at the edge of the cornfield. As children, we'd been forbidden from playing there, told it was too dangerous with its rotting wood and unstable structure. The room buzzed with whispered conversations as my family tried to decipher the cryptic message. Some looked confused. Others seemed annoyed by the delay. My father finally spoke up, his voice carrying a note of impatience that I knew all too well from childhood. "It's probably just some sentimental trinket," my father said dismissively, already turning back to his conversation with Uncle Robert about the workshop tools. "You know how Mother was about her little mysteries and games." But I caught something in his eyes. Was it fear? Concern? Or just the same disappointment he'd always shown when it came to my life choices? My sister Lisa approached me as the room began to empty, her expression softer than the others. "You should check it out," she whispered. "Grandma always said you were her kindred spirit. Maybe she really did leave you something special." The encouragement meant more than she probably realized. Lisa had always been the peacekeeper in our family, the one who tried to bridge the gap between my unconventional choices and our parents' expectations. If she thought there might be something to Grandma's message, then maybe I wasn't just chasing false hope. As the last of my relatives filed out of the lawyer's office, I found myself staring at the note again. The words seemed to shimmer with possibility, with the promise of one last connection to the woman who had understood me better than anyone else ever had. 2 days later, I stood at the edge of Grandma's property, with the key to the main house in my pocket. Sarah wouldn't take possession for another week, which gave me time to explore without awkward explanations or interference. The farm looked smaller than I remembered from childhood visits, but the silo loomed as large and mysterious as ever. The old structure stood about 50 yards from the main house, its wooden sides weathered to a silvery gray that caught the late afternoon sun. Metal bands wrapped around its circumference like giant bracelets, some still sturdy, others showing signs of rust and age. The conical roof had several missing shingles and weeds grew tall around its base, but the overall structure appeared sound. I approached slowly, my grandmother's note clutched in my sweaty palm. What exactly was I supposed to be looking for? And how was I supposed to get inside? The main door at the base was secured with a heavy padlock that looked newer than the rest of the hardware, as if someone had recently ensured the silo would stay closed. Walking around the perimeter of the silo, I searched for any clue that might explain Grandma's cryptic message. The afternoon light filtered through the trees, casting shifting shadows that made every crack and crevice look potentially significant. I ran my hands along the weathered wood, feeling for loose boards or hidden compartments. On the third circuit, I noticed something odd about one section of the metal banding. While most of the bands showed uniform weathering and rust patterns, this one looked different, cleaner somehow, as if it had been recently handled or moved. I pressed against it experimentally and felt it give slightly under pressure. My pulse quickened as I examined the area more carefully. The band wasn't just decorative or structural, it was concealing something. With a little manipulation, I managed to slide a section aside, revealing a small cavity carved into the wooden wall of the silo. Inside was a key, old brass, worn smooth by years of handling, with a small tag attached by a faded ribbon. The tag bore a single word in Grandma's handwriting: patience. The key fit perfectly into the padlock securing the main entrance. As the heavy door swung open, stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of old grain and decades of disuse. I pulled out my phone's flashlight and stepped inside, immediately overwhelmed by the vastness of the space. The silo stretched up into shadows above my head, its circular walls creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere. Sunlight filtered down from gaps in the roof, creating columns of golden dust motes that danced in the still air. The floor was covered with a layer of old grain husks and debris, but beneath that, I could see the outline of the original wooden planking. I began systematically searching the interior, following the beam of my flashlight along every surface I could reach. Grandma's note had mentioned that what I sought would require patience and love to find. What could that mean in a place like this? I was looking for something hidden, something valuable enough that she'd chosen it as my sole inheritance. Halfway around the wall, my light caught something that made me stop breathing. Carved into the wooden wall at eye level were two sets of initials inside a heart, E.T. plus J.M. The carving was old, but carefully maintained, as if someone had regularly traced over the letters to keep them clear. Eleanor Thompson, my grandmother's maiden name, was Eleanor Turner. But who was J.M.? Below the heart, almost hidden by years of dust and debris, was a small door, more like a panel really, about the size of a book. It was secured with a tiny brass lock that matched the key I'd found outside. My hands shook as I inserted the key and turned it. The mechanism was well oiled despite its age, and the panel swung open with barely a sound. Inside was a metal box, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from moisture and time. I lifted it carefully, surprised by its weight. Whatever was inside wasn't just papers or photographs. I carried the box to where a shaft of sunlight provided better illumination and slowly unwrapped the protective covering. The box itself was beautiful, ornate silver with delicate engravings of flowers and birds. It looked like an antique jewelry case, but larger and more substantial. A small brass plate on the lid was engraved with the same initials I'd found carved in the wall. Inside the silver box, I found treasures that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with the human heart. The first layer contained dozens of love letters, tied with faded blue ribbons and written in two different hands. One I recognized as Grandma's, the other presumably belonging to the mysterious J.M. I selected a letter at random and began to read by the filtered sunlight. It was from 1943, written in my grandmother's young hand to someone she called my dearest James. The letter spoke of wartime separation, of dreams for the future, of a love that transcended the uncertainty of those dark years. James had been her first love, I realized, someone she'd known before she met my grandfather. The letters revealed a passionate romance cut short by the war, filled with promises and plans that would never come to fruition. The last letter in the stack was from 1944, informing Eleanor that James had been killed in action in France. But the box held more than just correspondence. Beneath the letters were items that told a story of artistic dreams deferred, sketches signed E.T., watercolor paintings of the farm and surrounding countryside, even some small sculptures carved from wood. My grandmother had been an artist, just like me. At the bottom of the box, I found what Grandma had really wanted me to have: a leather portfolio containing dozens of her artworks, along with a savings account book showing deposits made regularly for the past 15 years. The balance was more money than I'd ever seen in one place, enough to set up a proper studio to pursue my art without worrying about rent or groceries. But more important than the money was the final letter, addressed to me specifically and dated just 2 months before her death. In it, she explained everything. She'd been 17 when she fell in love with James Morrison, a boy from the neighboring farm who shared her artistic soul. They'd planned to move to the city after the war, to pursue their dreams of becoming artists together. When James was killed, she'd buried her artistic aspirations, along with her broken heart. She'd married my grandfather, a good man, but a practical one who didn't understand the pull of creativity. She'd spent the rest of her life supporting his farming operation and raising her family, keeping her artistic side hidden away like a secret shame. But you, the letter continued, you had the courage I never did. You chose art over security, dreams over expectations. You are living the life I should have lived, and I am so proud of you for that choice. The afternoon was fading as I sat in the silo, surrounded by the evidence of my grandmother's hidden life. Everything made sense now. Her quiet encouragement of my artistic pursuits, her understanding when others in the family criticized my choices, the way she'd always looked at me with a mixture of pride and wistfulness. She hadn't just left me money, she'd left me validation. She'd left me proof that choosing art over conventional success was a worthy path, even if it came with sacrifice and struggle. The woman I'd thought I knew had been an artist herself, forced by circumstances and societal expectations to abandon her dreams. The silo had been their secret meeting place, hers and James's. They'd carved their initials here, shared their dreams here, planned their future here. When he died and those dreams crumbled, she'd used this place to store not just her artwork, but her hopes and aspirations for a different kind of life. I understood now why she'd chosen such a cryptic way to leave me this inheritance. She wanted me to find it through my own curiosity and determination, the same qualities that had led me to choose art despite my family's disapproval. As I carefully repacked the silver box, I felt a profound connection to the grandmother I thought I'd known completely. She'd lived with this secret for over 60 years, carrying the weight of abandoned dreams while watching me pursue the path she'd never been able to take. The money would change everything for me. I could finally rent a proper studio, buy quality supplies, maybe even show my work in galleries without worrying about whether it would sell. But the real gift was the knowledge that I came from a line of artists, that the creative fire burning inside me wasn't an anomaly or a rebellion against family tradition, but a continuation of it. I locked the silo door behind me and walked back toward the main house, where warm light spilled from the kitchen windows. Tomorrow, I would call the bank about the account, start making plans for my artistic future. Tonight, I wanted to sit on Grandma's back porch one more time and read through her love letters, her artwork, her private thoughts that she'd trusted me to discover. The family had gotten their tangible inheritances, the houses and furniture and jewelry that would remind them of Grandma in conventional ways. But I had something more precious. I had her dreams. 6 months later, I stood in my new studio, a converted warehouse space with soaring ceilings and walls of windows that filled the room with natural light. Canvases lined the walls, some completed, others half-finished, all of them infused with the confidence that comes from knowing you're on the right path. I'd framed one of Grandma's watercolors and hung it in a place of honor next to my easel. It showed the view from the silo toward the main house, painted with the skilled hand of someone who truly saw beauty in everyday things. Sometimes I caught myself staring at it, imagining her as a young woman, full of artistic dreams and hopes for the future. The family had been shocked when they learned about the money, about Grandma's secret artistic life. Some had expressed regret about not knowing her better. Others had questioned why she'd chosen me over more deserving relatives. But their opinions mattered less to me now than they ever had before. I'd organized my first gallery showing for next month, a collection I was calling Hidden Dreams, inspired by Grandma's story and featuring both my work and several of her pieces that I'd had professionally restored. The silver box sat on a shelf in my studio, no longer hidden, but displayed with pride as a reminder of where I came from and where I was going. Thank you so much for listening to this story about love, loss, and the courage to follow your dreams. It means the world to me that you took the time to share this journey of discovery and family secrets. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Where in the world are you listening to this story from? Are you in a cozy coffee shop, walking through your neighborhood, or relaxing at home? It's amazing to think about all the different places and moments where stories like this touch people's lives. If you enjoyed this tale of hidden inheritances and artistic dreams, please consider subscribing to the channel. There are so many more stories to discover together, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most valuable gifts are the ones that take a little searching to find.